for me as a patient to come to an understanding, for me as a patient to express actually what's going on for me. And I think when we come from the perspective of a practitioner, it's very much about understanding how the person's mind works so that you can speak to them in such a way in which they can receive the information. So many times we're talking across from each other, like we're just talking past each other. They come in and they've got their beautiful thing and they use the words that they use and they're speaking such gold.
Connect Coaching, Unplugged.
All right, welcome everybody to the Unplugged podcast, episode number 11. This week we have a very special guest, Katie Godden. Katie is known to many as Australia's leading female language and communication expert, regularly brought in to speak on stages, facilitate or hold training international reach. Katie's teachings run deep across many industries, from the health sector to the general public, inclusive of high-level communication and language patterns, with industry supporting patients and support teams to amplify the way they interact with themselves and others. Katie's beliefs is that language and communication is the catalyst for change in health. Katie is extremely particular about the way we speak about with people who suffer with long-term illness conditions. The depth in the understanding and lived experience has transformed her own relationship with patients, professional, and most importantly, her own experience with type 1 diabetes. Communication is complex and worth the time investing in better outcomes. Hence, while she is a huge advocate for people to live stronger, healthier, and happier, and is the founder of Wellness Revolutions. As the patient with 36 years of experience with type 1 diabetes, 13 years of research and implementation, holistic health science, and 17 plus years in education and training. Because of this personal experience, Katie is committed to training with passion and purpose to transform the relationships between patient and practitioner. So welcome to the Unplugged podcast, Katie. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. I've been looking forward to this one. We've been dying to get you on. It's been a little while since we've been able to get you on. So thank you for being here and welcome along.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. It's interesting when you hear it back and you kind of think, oh yeah, I've been around for a little while.
You've certainly been around for a little while. I feel like I've known you now for quite a number of years, probably coming on about seven or so years. And I remember you, there's people that stand out along your journey. And I remember you because you were totally dialed in from the very first phone call that I had with you, and you were always ready to play at 100%. And I feel like what we're seeing now over the last couple of years is a huge resurgence or a rebirth almost of what you're doing, and seeing so much more of you and so many students in front of you. It's great to see those full trainings. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that. And I should, before I get into it, I should introduce co-host. We're still getting the hang of this. Connie,
We're still learning how to do the podcast. I think we spend all day with each other, Callum. We just assume everyone knows who we are. And so good to be here. I'm Connor, co-founder of Connect Coaching, and super happy to be here with you, Katie and Cal.
Thanks, Katie. But yeah, where I'd like to start, I mean, you have been around for a very long time, but I'm always interested in that first spark that gets the engine going. What was it for you, and how did you find your way into this very niche position of work that you do, and what was it that inspired you at the beginning?
Oh, fabulous question. It's been a bit of a journey, and it's one of those things that takes us in all sorts of directions, and we feel like we're turning left and right, and we don't know where we're actually going. But as I sit here and look back, there was an absolute path of precision that came through. And so for me, it started a long time ago. I actually started out as a primary school teacher. And so I've been educating people for a really long time, and little people. But as I went through life, I realized that motherhood changes people. Motherhood gives you new priorities. It gives you new ways of thinking. It changes your whole perspective on the planet. And throughout my journey into motherhood, and I have two gorgeous humans, two boys, They are now 14 and 12. And their entries into the world were quite different and quite unique. And that led me into a place of really needing to work on my mindset, because I'd worked on my body, I'd worked on getting my health back. And being someone who's been in the healthcare industry for, gosh, it's now actually 38 years. Now 38 years that I've been experiencing type 1. And it wasn't until I had my kids that I actually made it a priority. I had been in the system, out of the system. And before I had my kids, I actually just stopped going into any form of healthcare, full stop. I just stopped. I was done with the system. I was done with the methodologies. I was done just in me. I was like, I'm over it. And so I just refused to go. And when my kids were born, I kind of had to take a little bit more responsibility for what was going on inside of my body, because ultimately I knew it would affect them. And so there was always this dance between myself and health and wellness. There was always, since I was really little, lots of things to and fro. And it was a beautiful synchronized dance of ups and downs. But what really stood out for me as I moved through was that after I had my boys, my health became my priority, because I wanted to be a 90-year-old woman who was actually out on the grass with my grandkids, and I was lying down looking at the clouds, or I was making angels in the grass, or we were just kicking a footy round, whatever it was, that had to be me at 90. And the way that I was going, I didn't believe that would be true. And so I dove into studying health and wellness and just flipped my health. I changed my blood results, my anti-inflammatory markers. I got down below a point where endocrinologists and doctors and all sorts of specialists told me I would never get it below 1,000, and I got it to 245. I lost like 10 kilos of weight. I halved my insulin rate, and I got myself into a place of where I was really feeling well. But the problem and the challenge for me, and why I got into what I got into, was because inside here was a different story. So I had all this success in changing my bloods and changing the way my body was and how fit and healthy and vibrant I was moving forward. But there was just something inside of me that was like, something's not quite right. And I just couldn't work out what it was. Anyway, as part of this, I started my own business. I don't know if you guys know this, actually. I had my own little company called Rosy Cheeks, and I made paleo food, and it was highly successful. I had my own kitchen at my house and this big oven. Her name was Eleanor, and she was divine. And we'd spend a lot of time together. And
This looks like a metaphor.
it's could be, maybe it is, maybe it's not. I don't know. But she was beautiful, and she had such a great time with me. We spent so much time together. But what I realized is that we were both overworked. We were waking up at 6 a.m. I had little boys then, so they were only, 6 and 4. And I was working from 6 a.m. and I'd still be baking at 11 o'clock at night to keep up with the demand of the food that was coming through. So I was doing the whole, going to markets, doing all of those things. And because I was exposed in the markets, I was exposed to a lot of people that had health and wellness challenges. And it drove me crazy that they were having the same problems I was. They felt like they were misunderstood. They felt like they were fighting it on their own. They felt like they were stupid because there were symptoms that no one could see. And so they were battling the internals, and they said to me, well, what did you do? And so I handed them everything on a platter. Here, take everything. Here's every book, every recipe. Here's what I eat every day. Here's what I've studied. Like, take it and go. And me being me, I just thought that they'd do it. And I was like, of course they will. Like, here it is. They want this result.
Here's the solution.
Yeah.
Take action.
On a silver platter. I even had it organized into little folders, and I gave them the directions of what steps I did first, and just said to them, there it all is. You guys can just figure out what works for you. And anyway, to my disbelief, I had one person that made a shoe. One person. And I was like, what? I mean, you guys could imagine, right? Like, it boggled me.
So in this time now, and you would see them again, and they would say, "Oh, I've been too busy." What would they say? How would they give you their reasons?
Yeah, all the reasons. All the reasons. I'm too busy with the kid. I got no time. Oh, it's too much money. It's too hard work. I just can't stop eating bread. Like that was one of the biggest. Like, how do you just not eat grains, Katie? I said, I
Like,
just stop. Yeah. So there were so many. It's too hard. It's too time consuming. It's too much mental load. It's this, it's that, it's the other. And I was literally perplexed and lost. I thought you just get it and you do it and you go. Like that was my method. And I'd researched, I'd spent, oh gosh, I probably spent 7 years researching and implementing and actioning myself before I ever gave anything to anybody, so it had to be lived experience. And my brother,
you know that little meme that went around a little while ago where it was someone saying who wants change, and everyone puts their hand up, and then the next image was who wants to change, and then no one puts their hand up. It absolutely reminds me of that.
yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt. And they didn't understand. That was their reality that they were living. And for me, that wasn't a good enough standard. For me, it was like, well, there has to be more to this than me just having everything and making it work. Like there's something I'm missing. And, being in education for a long time, I thought I was really good at communicating and going to markets. I can build rapport really easy. I have great conversations and connections with people. And it wasn't until my brother said to me, "Hey, kid, have you heard of NLP?" And I was like, "NL what?" And he goes, "NLP. I'm not going to tell you about it. Go and work it out." I was like, okay. So I'm quite a researcher and studious. And so I'm like a dog with a bone because I'll just go with it. And so Eleanor she got to have a little rest for a while. And
Is Eleanor still around? Is she still with us?
she is still with us. Yeah, she is. And she does great things other than just paleo food. So she's a great asset. Yeah. And so anyway, that's when I dove into finding out about behavior, about personalities, about communication, about what stops people taking the action or what holds people back, and why can some people make things happen and other people can't. And then I fell into the rabbit warren. I was just like Alice in Wonderland. I just kind of dived in and went through all the little holes and loops and just followed my nose and came to that next thing and then came to that next thing and then got excited about the next thing. And the underlying tone behind everything, though, was always about how do I experience what I'm experiencing, aka the experience of type 1, and there's all these possibilities of I wonder what else is possible for me with this.
Yeah.
And so I then started to dive into the relationship between myself and my condition that I had been told was going to be forever. And so there's a lot of mental, emotional load that goes on with someone, as you guys would know, when it comes to that. But what I realized through doing the work myself, the internal work, so working on my mindset, working on the language that I use, working on my communication.
When you say language do you use, is that with others or with yourself?
Both.
Yeah. You say
Sorry, Connor.
Would you say the language to yourself is just as important to the language you use with others?
I actually believe that it's most important,
Okay.
the language with ourselves, because for me, this is just my experience, right?
Sure.
Having been diagnosed with something that they have told you for years is you're going to have it forever. There's nothing you can do about it. You were just the unlucky one. Oh, you must be strong enough because otherwise you wouldn't have gotten it. And then all of the other things that you hear along, oh, there's weight challenges, there's this. Then you've got all these complications that can come. And like we're fed this information. It felt like to me like I was fed it every day. It's almost like, or at least every time I'd go to a clinic or I'd think about, going to see a doctor or a specialist or whatever, because as a kid, you've got your team, and every person who has a condition, they have what I call our teamies. And I'm very particular about who my teamies are because I know they're feeding my mind. And I'm very particular about what I share with my my team is, because I don't want to use them as a place for me to have an excuse to speak in a way which doesn't empower me. And so I'm very mindful of that. And so for me, because I am existing with the experience of type 1, my mindset, my language, my communication with myself is vitally important. It's vitally important. The way in which I language it. And this was, can I share a pivotal moment of like language and communication with you? Is that all right?
Some examples would be good because there's some people that are listening today that wouldn't, but that have a bit of an idea what you're talking about. Some examples of what you did would be fantastic as well.
Yeah.
And type 1 specifically meaning type 1.
Oh, yes. Yes. Sorry. You live in the world, you sometimes think like jargon, right? Yeah. So I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 4.5. One of the first people in my family to ever be diagnosed, and it was a big shock to the family. And so what this is they classify it as an autoimmune condition. You'll see me do this, and that's because it's just the language that the medical system has wrapped around it. And so there's a part of me that does this because I then know that it's not part of me. It's just part of what the environment talks about. So just if I'm doing this, it's not because of anything other than it's the way I've trained my mind. And so what I've chosen to do is alter my relationship with what my body is experiencing. Now, one of the biggest things that I came across was, I don't know whether you guys have ever had this, maybe the audience knows it as well, but if someone says a particular word, it can make you cringe. You can go, yeah, I don't like that word. Or it might trigger you, or it might give you a sense of taking you back to a memory, or it might put you in a place where you feel uncomfortable and you don't like it. So I had this issue, and I didn't realize it. It was deeply unconscious. But the conversation that was always echoed around was this fact of, this is Katie, she's a diabetic. I'm Katie, I'm a diabetic. And all of a sudden, it's become attached to my identity.
Like your label.
Yeah, I am that.
Yeah.
And it was a badge I did not want.
Yeah.
And so for me, like the disgruntledness that I felt internally, because this is what I fought with, it was like I was having, to give you an idea, it was like I was having an internal battle with myself consistently, because I didn't want this thing, and yet I had this thing was in my 3D reality. And so it was this real tussle for years and years and years.
What was it about that label that you didn't want? Because some people are okay with it. What was it with yours that they went, this is not me. I'm not this label.
Yeah. So I didn't realize for a really long time why it was so disgruntling. It had sat with me for a really long time. And I think, when I was younger in my teens, it was something that I went with, right? Because as we're growing up, we're told things and we take them on, and we just take them as it is, and we don't know any better. Then as I went through and I started to discover more of the nuances around language, around communication, around identity, around personal development, around who I be and who I get to choose to show up as in the world.
Suggestions.
Yeah, all the suggestions, exactly. And I was just taking them on. I didn't realize that I was openly suggestible. Someone would say something, a doctor would say something, I'd take it straight on. Boom. Katie, you're not doing a good enough job. Your sugars are out of control. Like, Katie, you need to do better. Katie, that's not good enough. Katie, you need to work on that. If you don't do this, then this is going to happen. Right? And because my diabetic educator today, she gives me the best metaphor. So anyone out there who's listening to this, I would love you to take this metaphor on. I was challenged one day recently with the way my levels were and all my blood results and all these sort of things. And I was frustrated, and I was having a human moment. And I just said to her, oh gosh, like, I just want to get it right. There was that whole being of wanting to get it right so that I could live well. That's the purpose. I wanted it right. And she just looked at me and she smiled and she goes, oh, Katie. She goes, diabetes is just like trying to nail jelly to the and she paused, and I sat there and I just started crying, Because for my whole life, in that moment, my whole life, I had realized that what I'd been doing was trying to hang up an artwork that had no place being hung.
Mhm.
Like, what
Yeah.
a moment. It was, that's when I knew she was my permanent teamie.
Yeah.
Is she gave me a whole new reframe on life, a whole new reframe on what I'd been doing. And going back to the I am, it was when I realized and I'd come to a place where I learned the power and importance of an identity and holding true to my identity and my truth, despite what's going on outside of me, despite what a doctor says, a nurse, because what I realized is that they have the greatest intention for us. They want us to be well. They want to help us. They want to take care of us. And they don't know any better than what they know. And
They
so,
probably feel a little bit helpless at the same time because they can't get the answers exactly right themselves, you know?
yeah. And there's so many nuances, everybody is different.
Mm.
Literally everybody is different. And so rather than blaming, so the real big shift happened for me when I stopped blaming the outside and I started to come in and I looked at myself. I was like, oh, and the actual problem that was then so I didn't blame myself, but I looked at, well, what was challenging me? Because I was asked to go and speak at an event and it was actually around the specifics of me being someone who's a diabetic. And I was like, God, doesn't feel good in my body. Like, I want to do this because I know that it can make such a difference, but there was just something about it. And so I sat down and I unpacked my own thinking. And what I came to the realization is that I am so much more than a diabetic.
Mm.
Is it all right if I say something a little controversial? Is that all right with you guys?
Yeah, I guess so.
So something
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
yeah, good, great. You're welcome, everybody. One of the things is if someone is suffering from, say they're experiencing cancer, we don't call them cancer.
No.
We don't. And yet there's part somewhere along the line that has come to this point that someone who's experiencing type 1, particularly, I don't know if it's for anyone else out there, but type 1 particularly is that it became a label. It became part of the identity. And actually, I'm so much more than a diabetic.
Mm.
I'm not. I'm a mum. I'm passionate. I'm committed. I love life. I'm strong. I'm courageous. I'm curious. I'm determined. I am so much more than a label that has been given. Now, I understand that sometimes contextually we need to give people reference points, but for me, the way I manage it, because here's the thing, society is trained in a particular way. And we're trained in the diabetic space, to call people a diabetic. There's someone who has diabetes. It's sort of like this thing. But for me, the one language shift that changed everything is that I am someone who is just experiencing type 1 because there's no finite definite that I'll have it forever. And yes, there's evidence to show that it could be forever. However, if we look at the technology that's coming through and where I'm already at, it feels half like it's not there anyway. And so it's an internal state of mind for me. And so having that, whenever I talk about anything, and I always teach this in my trainings, is the fact that the language we use shapes that person's reality. And so if we can have this, that I am someone experiencing, it's lost its definiteness, its solidarity in the person's neurology, and it opens them up to other miracles that may happen and other possibilities and to move through. And it just makes, it's not their identity. It then detaches and it just becomes this thing that's there. So yes.
As you're talking, I can map it across. If I introduce myself, as Callum said, hi, this is Connor, he's slow. And everyone who I met, hi, I'm Connor, I'm slow.
Yeah.
It would only be a matter of time before I start actualizing that label, I'm sure. And it'll give me an excuse to not push myself further because I now have this label that I'm slow and therefore that's the expectation. And I don't have to achieve anything other than what slow represents.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And it echoes across all aspects of our lives, like our kids particularly, having two boys and coming to the place of like, well, how do we want them to experience themselves? And the moment that we put a label on anything that they have, like my son throughout school was told that he was a bad speller.
Yeah.
And you know what? He still to this day believes he's a bad speller. And it doesn't matter what shifts come in, eventually he doesn't care now.
Yeah.
He's just like, "Meh, people will make sense of this, Mum. Yeah, they will, mate.
Yeah.
That's exactly right." So
And this has been one of the pivotal points that has led you to the direction that you're heading
yeah,
in now,
yeah,
which is in a similar space, but really educating and inspiring others to take on the belief that they're much more than labels.
yes,
Yeah. In
absolutely.
fact, it was one of the last things I learned about you. Speaking about you being so much more than experiencing diabetes, it was one of the very last things I learned about you. And I saw all those other attributes first, and to be honest, I see that experience that you're having through the lens of all those other things. So, one thing that's really stood out to me over the last 12 months is the Katie Godden brand just, taking off like an absolute rocket. And there's a lot of people listening that we've worked with in the past or working with now that I guess are working out who they are, because it does link back to our identity. And I feel like this is a big part of why you are nailing it with your brand right now.
Mhm.
It does link back to identity. It does link back to you authentically being you. It does link back to you being you and all your spectrum of colors and unapologetically you. And I wonder, because to be honest, I didn't see that at first in the way that you built your brand. So to help anyone out there that's, at that same point you probably were a few years ago, what was the catalyst for that? What was like this, I'm doing this and it's going to be like this, and that sort of rocket pack on your back sort of moment.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, let's go. Help me unpack that a little bit, because I think it would help a lot of the people that are listening.
Yeah, so it was a bit of a journey, and the whole identity shifting and stepping into a new space and being courageous. All it really takes is one step of courage. And what I realized along the way is, I used to work um, as a trainer in NLP for a different company, and I learned stack loads and heaps and became my own human in that. And what I realized as I started to shed all the layers and worked on myself, because that was the biggest thing, I never stopped working on me. I never quit working on me. Like, it's always about that next level evolution of who I can be. And what it came down to is there kept being this echo in my mind, this little nudge. You guys know the little nudge that you have, like, yeah, this is the thing. And you kind of ignore it. And you're like, oh yeah, that's my thing. But the pivotal moment for me was when I actually realized that there was a difference between what drove my heart home and what didn't. And the biggest catalyst for me was my dad, to be brutally honest. My dad got really sick, and to a point where we were really concerned. And what happened was we were trying to find all different, because the mainstream wasn't helping. He was just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And so we tried to find some alternate therapies. And because I'm a big alternate health person, and I'm very passionate about it, and I love everything that is about it. And so we tried to find some different places to support him. And it was to the place that I was like ringing people going, oh my gosh, can you help me? Can you help me find someone? Because of course, being my dad, I'm his little girl. I'm the youngest of the three of us. And I was always dad's little girl. I was the one sitting in the tractor with him. I was the one going on the motorbikes. I was the one out doing the cattle work. I was the one cracking the whip with him, all of those things that he wasn't open for a solution from me to start with. Anyway, we took him to two different people, and the one he listened to and he started to, he was a blood specialist. So dad loves real sciencey. He's very much into a system and a method and an old school kind of way. And so we found this man who was a naturopath, but he called himself a blood specialist. Now, he told dad all this information. Dad came back and told me about it. He didn't follow through and he was getting sicker. And then we found this other person who actually was had a rural background. And for those of you who don't know, my family is a farming background, obviously. And he had a 3-hour consultation with this woman. And it is now nearly 3 years and he is healthier than he ever was. He stuck to it. He did the work. He committed. He was a chocoholic, literally. He would have chocolate. He'd have spoonfuls of sugar. He'd have all of these foods that were toxic for his body. And he went to this woman and 1 3-hour conversation and it flipped his world forever. And my dad got well. And my dad turned from a man who was crippled and like could barely hold a cup to someone who now is out back on the farm, branding, doing all the work and all of the things that are there. So it got me so curious and I went, oh my gosh, this is my thing. Like, it was just simply the way she spoke to him that allowed the same message, because they had the same message. That
Yes.
allowed him to take control of his health. And that was the point for me. That was my pivotal moment. That was the moment I drew a line in the sand and said, actually, I can do this. And where I was currently working, that they were heading in a different direction. And it was like, no, the calling for this was so strong that something had to change in language and communication through my journey, through my experience, through my dad's, even through my nephew who experiences type 1, right? Like he's being told the same stuff that I was when I was 15.
Yeah.
And so all of that together packaged into me just actually getting the courage to say, you know what? You are more than capable. You absolutely have the skill set. You just got to back yourself.
Hey guys, Callum and Connor here from Connect Coaching. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Unplugged podcast. We're jumping in to let you know about something really exciting, the Forever Client Matrix.
Absolutely. What we love doing is lighting people up and helping them realize that their future is bright and, most importantly, making a difference in this world. So we are very excited to be able to share this with you.
If you want to turn every prospect into a forever client, then please click on the link below in the description and get instant access now to your preview of the Forever Client Matrix.
Enjoy.
Is it a need that's there? Yes. Why? Because I'm passionate about it and I know from a patient perspective and from a client, like a training perspective, the power that language and communication has in our clients getting results.
So we've kind of danced around the language a little bit and what specifically needs to change in terms of the way that practitioners, health professionals talk to their clients. And I've experienced this myself in a number of different ways. I've got some chronic things that I'm dealing with as well. But where it became like really, really obvious for me was when my wife became pregnant for the first time and we started this whole journey of getting the first initial scan, getting the blood work done. They talk about gestational diabetes and that whole sort of stuff. And then the whole sort of walk towards the birthing day becomes almost this indoctrination into, and I need to watch what I say here as well, but almost becomes this sort of suggestion that there will need to be some sort of intervention in some way, shape or form. So, we did this hypnobirthing course, which is amazing, obviously, because of my background, but also to get Nikki up to speed with some of the thinking around suggestions, around, self-talk and around getting your body into a trance-like state to have it do its natural thing. And, some of the ways that she had up framing specific words was the difference that made the difference on the day for us. Huge. So I'd love to hear more specifically about what those things were and what are some examples of those types of conversations and how can we, what are some takeaways for us and how can we shift the way that we talk to ourselves, even just with our general health, moving forward.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Yeah, yeah, no, Connor, you
Apologies, my internet's been down and I'm now streaming through my phone. I'm not too sure what happened
Okay.
with that.
who knows? You're back. It's
Thanks.
okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. Uh, there's a number of questions there, so I'll do my best to answer them. Callum, if you need me to redirect, just let me know. Depending on who I'm talking to, right? If I'm talking to natural health practitioners or wellness coaches in the space that I do, we very heavily focus on understanding our clients' map of the world. Because when we understand their map of the world, then we can be flexible in our communication in order for them to receive the information and feel empowered in that. Because that's the mission that all of the people who come to me, they want to empower their clients to make the health changes. They have some really cool techniques and some insights and modalities that they use, but that's what they're looking for. So we really make sure that when it comes to this, we are not labeling the client with that particular thing that they're experiencing. It's just a symptom. Their body's telling them something. So we're very strong in that regard. The second thing is to gain clarity and ask questions. When I was growing up and throughout my whole journey, even through my 2 pregnancies and what we experienced in the medical system there is being asked really empowering questions for us. For me, as the patient, to make the decisions. Like for me as a patient to come to an understanding, for me as a patient to express actually what's going on for me. And I think when we come from the perspective of a practitioner, it's very much about understanding how the person's mind works so that you can speak to them in such a way in which they can receive the information. So many times we're talking across from each other, like we're just talking past each other. They come in and they've got their beautiful thing and they use the words that they use and they're speaking such gold. And the patient's sitting there going, I don't know what you're talking about. I've got no
Yeah.
idea. It's kind of like there's just this whole other language going on. And so with the practitioners particularly, we're talking about how do we understand our clients in such a way that we can speak to them so that they can make an informed decision. Because in our space, in what we do, it's all about the client being empowered to make the decisions for them based on all of the knowledge that comes from the person who knows best, right? The person who's been trained in that.
Yeah. Is it like back at the beginning of the conversation today, you said you gave the people in the markets everything that they had to do, but they didn't necessarily do anything with it.
Yeah.
So it's teaching someone to fish versus, giving them a fish versus teaching them how to fish, and the information's there, but they have to receive it in a way that actually gets them to do something about it. And that's, I guess, you saying that's where you specialize. That's the magic ingredient, I guess, in this communication is getting them to hear it, but actually take action on what they need to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And help. And it's also about empowering the client to be able to make new decisions. Because just because they think a certain way, yes, number one, our language and communication to them needs to be heard and received. Yes. So that they can, so that we know that they've like 3 things, right? We want to be heard, understood, and supported in our health journey. We do. And so learning the language and communication, and specifically language, even it comes down to this nuance that even the order and sequence in which you say it in a sentence will either be suggesting something that is unresourceful for the patient or resourceful. So yes, we have duty of care that we need to make sure we tell them what the possibilities are of a particular thing and the effects that it may have on their body. You start with that and you finish with, but actually there's only a small percentage and most people feel this. A simple shift in just the way in which you share the information, which is necessary. I'm not saying don't say it because there's duty of care. There's like all of the things that we need to be mindful of in medicine. Yeah. And so it's very important that we look at that as well. So it's order and sequence. And you guys know, like a great metaphor is always a great way to resonate with the client rather than, I don't know about you. I hate to be told to do something. Do you guys, are you with me or is it just a Katie thing? I don't know.
Definitely me. I remember.
right? Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me what to do. And there's that little part inside of me that goes, don't tell me what to do. And when they said to me that I couldn't get my levels below 1,000, don't tell me I can't do that. And so we need to be mindful that if we're just standing there, and a lot of people who come to me, they're very good. And this is the distinction for them. And I love it so much, is that they're going from being a fixer mentality to a facilitator mentality. And when they come through and they journey through us with NLP, they realize that they were in a place of trying to fix, which is totally disempowering the client. And it's a lot more work. Whereas if we can help the client and facilitate the change with them, it actually becomes easier, less effort. And it's such a beautiful synergy between the practitioner and the client, the patient as well. So,
Uh,
yeah. Sorry,
Yeah,
Connor.
I would imagine the client would feel more empowered because it's a do with as opposed to a do to. And if you're doing it to someone, you're at the effect of the practitioner. If in business, if you ask for help from your team regarding a new project, they have more buy-in with the project and they take on board the project and the change that project brings within the organization. If you have their buy-in and you get their buy-in when they feel like they've helped have an influence on the direction which that project is going in. So I guess it would be very similar to that. The patient or the client would feel they are part of the solution as opposed to a result of something.
And you're exactly right, because they want that level. They feel like they don't have any control anyway. And so where we can give them a little sense of having ownership over what's going on for them, rather than being just told that they have to do it this way, or that it's the only way, or that it's this or that, or whatever the conversation might be for them. I think, and this goes for me personally as well, is that if I'm part of a partnership, when I talk about my teamies, and I spoke about, her name's Laura, I spoke about my diabetic educator, she's a teamie because we have to work together. This is, yes, I am the leading lady because it's my body that is needing to have some extra assistance, right? However, I got to have my teamies around me. I've got a naturopath. I have my diabetic educator. I've got an endocrinologist. I have a GP. And they each play their role in my healthcare, and I go to them according to what I need. So if we're the patient, so the second question, Callum, if I can answer that part for you, is us being able to ask questions of our practitioner. Communication is a two-way street that we also need to, and this is something that I've learned along the way as well, is that I need to know what I want, and I need to know how to ask for it, and I need to know how to speak for it in a respectful manner and hold true to me. Because that's the only way that we can achieve the results. It's not the only way, but it's a way that I believe is the strongest and most empowering, is when we know what we want and we come from a place and we ask the question. So when I work with clients who are moving through health experiences themselves, this is one of the things we actually do is role play when it's one-on-one. So this is outside the training room. We role play. Cool. You're going to go to that oncologist. What are you going to say? What questions do you have? Cool. How could we ask this so that they feel like they're part of the journey and you're in it together? Like, what language can we use? And so we'll have conversations. How would you express what you want? And I don't say it. I just ask them. And I ask them the questions for them to gain clarity, so that when they go to their calls, when they go to their meetings, because we know that some of these are really short and sharp, right? You've got 15 minutes with someone, can't be around all day having a conversation. And so it's about us knowing before we even go there, what direction do I want to go? Number one, how do I want to speak about what it is that I'm saying? And so for me, it's always about, I'm curious. I always lead with, hey, listen, I'm just a bit curious. What about this and this and this? Well, hey, I'm just wondering, I'd really like to get some blood results so that I can get X, Y, and Z looked at. Would you be able to help me with that? Now, the words just even in as a patient coming in, would you be able to help me with that? If anyone asks for help, do you ever say no? Like, if you can help them, do you? It's very rare. And so if you doctor, sorry, say that again.
Well, it's called the Benjamin Franklin effect. So it's got a name. It's asking for help, and that displaces resistance in the conversation and allows people to do what all people love to do is help other people. Or most people.
Most people are like that. Yeah. And that was one of the biggest gifts I gave myself. And, being selective with my team. If their values don't align with mine, then they're not on my team. I just find someone else. I'll do my research and I'll find someone else who is on the same wave. I call it the same wavelength as me. And that are going to empower me in the journey. And that's how I fill my life up with it. And if they don't, then that's okay. They're for someone else. They're just not for me. And then I get to find my people.
Yeah, I found what you said interesting before, where you said it's important that they tell you how it is, and maybe some of that information isn't what you want to hear, but you finish it by leaving them focused towards a positive outcome. And we do that. It's funny, we do that in business, we do that in sales. Connor and I talk about that whenever we're with one of our clients. Connor speaks about it in the Connect and Convert training, where if you have to bring something to the table that's not ideal for the client, then do it up front, but say, well, the good news is, but the good news is, we're able to do this, and you're able to focus on that, which means that in the future you can have this or be that or do that. And that leaves them with an internal representation, or at least with, in layman's terms, leaves them with a focus that is imagery of a positive outcome. And that can be the difference that makes a difference, because as we know, the focus that we have or hold on to affects our state, affects how we feel, and changes the behaviors that we enact through our everyday life. So that relationship is critical, and it is, being the authority figure in that relationship, being the health professional. There is an archetypal relationship that's set up where you do elevate that person to a certain degree, and therefore the suggestions that you take them on much, much more easily. So I guess I know, but I guess for people hearing it the first time, it may sound new to them, but they do have a responsibility, and the responsibility is on both parties. They do have a responsibility to know how that relationship is set up, not just in a commercial aspect, but also in a psychological aspect, so that they can make sure that they're leaving that person in the best possible state with the best possible actions to take afterwards, so that they can focus on a brighter outcome. I think that's really important.
And I think the thing that I want to make really clear is that we don't know what we don't know. And when it comes to, this sort of stuff isn't taught in colleges and in schools and in training. So, I think one of the key aspects is always relationships. And when it comes to what you're saying about them being the authority, I talk to my practice about that a lot, and saying, like, you guys are leaders. You're leaders. You're leading the way for these people who are coming to you for your expertise. And they wouldn't be there if they didn't want what you've got. And we need to be mindful of how we're leading them, because every conversation, and this is my motto, right? Like, we're changing the way that health's done one conversation at a time, because every conversation leaves an imprint on someone. Every conversation. And so in my model of the world, it's my responsibility to ensure that I am functioning at my highest, so that I can do that. And that comes to my kids as well, right? We're talking very professional. We talk about business.
And that's the light.
Yeah, like kids as well. And, there's no perfectionism, but there's this stretch of just becoming the greatest human we can be. And it's one conversation at a time. And I think when we can realize that there's so much more to language and communication than we're taught just from what we learn as we grow up as kids. My parents are both talkers, so it doesn't surprise me that I'm a talker. But it's a learned skill. And that's the beautiful thing about language and communication, and why I love it so much, is because it's not locked and loaded. Like, you're not stuck with the communication that you have. And even people who are going into business and they're moving in their journey, I want to share with them as well, is that we're never locked and loaded in where we are. It's just literally that willingness to learn, the willingness to be curious about what else is available, stepping into the unknown and just really leaning in and trusting yourself that actually this calling, this nudge that I've had is the thing that's going to work. And, Callum just hit the nail on the head about what we focus on. And so my focus as I evolved and, in the last 12 months, really stepping out into my own and being all of me in the space, all of who I've become, literally just took a courageous step, letting everything else go, taking that courageous step to follow that nudge and speak with passion. Because I love what I do, and I really have this passion for words, words and the way in which they're formed and they're delivered to people and we receive them, and there's so much to it. Anyway, I think it's just an important aspect that as people who are starting out, it's kind of like I've been in the space for a little while, but I'm also starting out in branching into my own very specific niche. And, people have said I'm crazy. I've had many people that have told me I'm doing the wrong thing. I've had many people say to me, "Oh, you can't be that niche, Katie. Like you can't. No, you need to be broad. You can reach more people. You'll make more money. You'll do all these things." And the fact is that I'm passionate about this. The fact is that I could talk forever about it. The fact is that this is my thing. And despite what everyone else says, this is what feels aligned. And when you step into that alignment and you really just trust, magic happens.
It does. So for our listeners who are maybe 1 foot in, 1 foot out with what they're doing, and they would like to step out with 2 feet with wherever now is for them, courage is a huge ingredient in that. And I was listening to a bit of Simon Sinek recently, and he was talking about, being a great leader, you have to have a lot of courage. So for you, what was the courage? Was it something you said to yourself? Was it a feeling? Was it a barrier, an internal barrier you pushed through? Was it having a conversation with someone? Did it happen overnight? Was it a lead up? Was it a crescendo of like, I'm now doing it? Or can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah. So, I played a little role of, if anyone has seen Tangled, right, knows the story of Rapunzel, where she lets down her hair. There's this beautiful moment in the kids' movie. If you haven't seen it, you need to see it. I love kids' movies. But in the kids' movie, there's
Saw it last week.
Well, you'll get it then. It'll resonate with you. I trust that everyone else will get it when I speak about it. But there was probably for 12 months, there was this element where I was just like Rapunzel when she left the castle. Her mother told her, "We never leave the castle. Don't leave the castle. It's comfortable. It's safe. Everything's great here. You've got everything that you need. Stay here in the castle." And Rapunzel's looking out and she sees these beautiful lights off in the distance. And she's like, "What are they? I wonder what they are." "We don't go there. That's not what we do. Stay in the castle." And anyway, this Flynn Rider man, he comes along and he finds the castle and he has this interaction with Rapunzel and she leaves the castle. She touches grass for the first time. And she's traveling and this Flynn Rider said, "I can take you to the lights. I'll take you to the light." And in the back of her mind, she's got her mother saying, "We don't leave the castle. Oh, we don't leave the castle." And she goes out and she's like, I'm free. And then the next minute she's like, "Oh my God, what have I done? Oh, should I do this? Should I not? Oh no, it's amazing. I love all these people." And then she's scared and she's frightened again. And she goes through this tussle in the journey between leaving the castle and getting to the lights, and going to the lights was so magnificent for her. It was such a beautiful thing to watch her move through those moments. And so I had a bit of that for about 12 months. And then it came to the last part, and it really came down to me having the courage to have a conversation where I spoke my truth.
With someone or with yourself?
Both.
Okay.
Both. So I needed to leave where I was and I needed to step into myself. So the first conversation began here.
Yes.
So I had a conversation with myself. And the conversation with myself was the most empowering out of all of them.
Yeah.
And what I did, the process that I went through is I actually had a conversation with myself about what I was doing and why was it important to me. And here was my biggest lesson: control the narrative. And when it came to me unpacking like what I was doing and where I was going, because there was a lot of emotion involved, there was a lot of, I'm a very loyal person, and there was a lot of loyalty and respect and all of these different aspects that came through and were bubbling up and like, oh, and it came to the point that I just said, Katie, stop, just stop. And I said, if you were to sum up what you're doing right now in one sentence, you can say I'm a talker in one sentence, what would it be? And it was literally this: I am going all in on me. For so long, I had built other people's dreams. I had helped other people. I had, even in education, like it was all for everybody else, all of those things, even the rosy cheeks that I built, it was all for everybody else. And it was like, actually, what are you doing? I'm just going all in on me. And it was the first time in my life where I really felt it was actually for me. And so I just told myself that story over and over again. And people would say, what are you doing? I'm just going all in on me. Oh, you've done this thing. Yeah, I'm going all in on me.
What's
Oh,
your
you started.
next course, Katie?
Yeah.
I
Go
think it's a
all in
great
on
one.
you.
Yeah.
Might be actually the theme for the podcast as well.
All in on me. T-shirts and everything. So it sort of, the motivation to change took 12 months, but once you made that, change happens in an instant. You just have to decide to change. But
Right.
sometimes it takes a long time to make that decision. So the motivation to change took 12 months, but once you decided, it was done.
Yeah, absolutely. It was done. And then from there, that was when I then had the conversation that I needed to have. And that's when I then stepped into like all the steps that needed to be taken from there. And what I did was I just moved fast enough that there was no room for doubt.
Okay,
So from leaving the old, like I set up my next training was in the May. I had no
Don't
room.
let that defy. Anybody that's listening, say that again, Katie, because that is a kicker. That is someone again.
I just left no room for doubt. I moved so fast that I left no room for doubt. And I continue to move fast so that I leave no room for doubt.
Nice.
Yeah, that is the kicker. That's something that we have definitely done in our business in terms of like moving so fast and not leaving any room for doubt. So that just hit me pretty solid because that is such a powerful learning that I wasn't conscious of. Yeah, really cool.
You're welcome.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
You know,
Katie, tell us more about how people can get involved with you.
yeah, absolutely. So people can get in touch with me on Facebook is my main hangout. That's where I like to hang. Just under Katie Godden. I have a website. My baby is the Pink Diamond Institute for all the things that being a pink diamond represent. And so they can meet me there at pinkdiamondinstitute.com.au. Yeah.
And who, like, I mean, I know that you work with both practitioners and patients alike, and also I guess people who are interested in coaching people that are patients and even people that are willing to coach health professionals. So can you give us this bit of a summary of that, what your offer is? I know that you've got an amazing program coming up in May. If you can plug that a little bit and go all in on you and yeah, let our audience know a bit more about it.
Yeah.
I love that you said it so many times. It's like, yeah, that really could be like a course.
Yeah.
How do you go all in on you? Yes. So my world, my work is all about changing the health space one conversation at a time. And so we work with natural health practitioners or healthcare workers, wellness coaches that are looking to amplify their language and communication to help their clients get better results. And to also help them get better results with relationships in their own lives. So we have our NLP trainings throughout the year. But coming up in May, we have a free week training, which is called the effective use of language, where we're talking about how do we utilize this thing so that we make a greater impact with the people we come across in the world, so that we can have better relationships, get better results, and increase our revenue at the same time.
Nice. 3 weeks, is that every day? 3 weeks? Is it evenings? How does that work?
Yeah, so there'll be a masterclass on the Monday, and then we have 3 days training, which is just an hour to an hour and a half on the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then we have a wrap-up session on the final day.
Nice one.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
Can we leave some information about that in the description or in the chat on the Facebook Live? That's what we'll do. We'll keep everyone up to date with what's going on through there.
Perfect. Will do.
Amazing. Well, Katie, thank you so much for being part of our podcast, Connect Unplugged podcast number 11. Super stoked to have you here. Thank you for sharing your story. And over and above, I know that you will have in the future and have already today inspired others to step in with 2 feet, go all in on them, and help them raise the game in their life to have an even bigger impact and ripple effect.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for having me. I've had a ball.
It's been awesome. Some golden nuggets for me as well. Thanks very much, Katie.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hey guys, Callum and Connor here from Connect Coaching. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Unplugged podcast. We're jumping in to let you know about something really exciting. If you are a practitioner, a coach, or a trainer in the alternative therapy modality space, the Forever Client Matrix is something that we've modeled in the last 30 combined years, both Connor and my experience. And we've turned it into a 2-day intensive, and we want to give you a preview of that Forever Client Matrix.
Absolutely.
We want to make the bar for them to enter into that program very, very low and have them get incredible results.
I've sold about $40 million worth, and together we've sold about $100 million worth with our teams.
That's right. We believe that trust and reliability is the currency of the future. So if you want to turn every transaction into a transformational experience, if you want to turn every prospect into a forever client, then please click on the link below in the description and get instant access now to your preview of the Forever Client Matrix.
Enjoy.